80s like salmon window frame kind of an office.
I sent a picture of the old office I used to be in to some friends once, and they said, "That's a shed. You can't be working out of that." I said, "Well, no, that's our office in the Botanic Gardens." They wouldn't believe me. They still don't. So yeah, building's fairly ancient. The inside's a bit fitted out, but it still feels like sometimes still feels like a stables that it was. So.
I really
You
like.
look at John Sandham, and he's got some corporate building behind him, and he's obviously highfalutin where he is.
And Jennifer is obviously in Northern Hemisphere Cathedral of some sort.
Saint Chapelle in Paris.
That's awesome.
Very impressive, Jennifer.
Yeah, I've got a few more that I can put behind me at some stage, but I thought this has got to have a run for a while.
And Greg Lewin, g'day, Greg. Good to see you.
Yeah, hi, John. I just unmuted. As you can see, I think I'm about to learn how to keep records. So that seems to be the role that I'll be doing as we move forward. And thanks for all your help and guidance. Glenda's actually out there at the moment with the 8 landscape architects that are going to do the sort of the macro design on the property. So, yep, she may make it back, but probably not. But it's all going ahead great, I think. And Neil's going great guns on the propagation, so it's all good.
Right. Lovely.
It's at least 34 people online already. It's amazing.
Awesome. So we might get started. Eamon, if you don't mind keeping admitting people while I'm multitasking,
Sure.
that would be great. So welcome everyone to our first BCARM workshop. My name's Emma Bodley. I work at the Auckland Botanic Gardens in New Zealand. I don't know if I have any of my New Zealand colleagues here at the moment, but it's nice to see you all here. Just so you know, we're recording today's session just in case there are people who couldn't make it. There's a few people who'd like to see what we chat about. If you don't want to be on camera in the recording, feel free to just turn your cameras off. Also, just introduce yourself in the chat, leave us your name and where you work and what your role is so we can get an idea of where everyone's from. And without further ado, I will get started. So I'm just going to share my screen and go through the agenda for today. And then we will do the part where you're all here for, which is to give your feedback and some ideas. So if everyone just wants to mute themselves while we go through the first part of the workshop. So hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yeah, we can see that, Emma.
Cool, thanks, Tex. Yeah, so welcome everyone. It's really lovely to have you here. Today we're just going to do a bit about what is BCARM. BCARM is a relatively new part of BCARMs. It existed prior to 2019 as Bronze, so a records kind of focused network, and it was relatively inactive. So a number of people who are on the call today initiated the BCARM network in 2019 at the Wellington Congress, which was really exciting. So over the last kind of year or so, we've been working on getting this group up and running. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our aim of BCARM is, some of the projects we've been working on. Chris Russell's going to talk a little bit about our connection to the GANS Council and things that are going on in that space. And then we're going to dig a little deeper into two of the kind of current projects that a number of the BCARM members have been involved with. And then the second kind of main part of today is to talk about what are the challenges you guys face in managing plant collections. We really want to hear from you about what things are either topics or problems or challenges that you face through, it might be records, it might be horticultural expertise, to kind of drive where BCARM goes over the next year or two. So we want to ensure that the projects we work on are things that you want answers to, and they're not things that we just think might be interesting. So have a little think over the next 10 to 15 minutes while a number of us talk about these topics as to what you might have to feedback on. And one thing we're really also interested in is, how do you guys want to connect with the BCARM network? So do you want to connect with people in similar roles to your own? Maybe you're an arborist and you want to talk to other arborists about health and safety and using databases, or maybe you want to have kind of a 24-hour access forum. Maybe the newsletter is fine. So have an idea of the kinds of ways you'd like us to engage with you and communicate the work that we are doing. So BCARM, in case you didn't know, it stands for Begans Collections and Records Management. So not BCARM, but BCARM. And these are the 7 members of the group. So myself from Auckland, and at Auckland I am the Botanical Records of Conservation Specialist. I've been here for 7 years, and I've just recently become the chair of BCARM. So we also have John Arnott. John, do you want to say hello?
Yep, I've come up on the screen as Jono because I'm using my personal computer here, but Royal Botanic Gardens, Cranford.
Thanks, John. John Sandham, do you want to say hello? John's hiding somewhere.
Hello, everybody.
John, you're at South Australia?
Yeah, no, the Botanic Gardens of South Australia. We have 3 wonderful gardens, eclectic mix of stuff, and we were hosted the Congress here in 17, so very much want to progress BCARM, and thank you, Emma, for taking over the chair.
So yeah, just like to acknowledge John was the first chair of BCARM, and he just recently handed that role over to me, so it was great him getting that project started. Donna Thomas is here. Do you want to say hello, Donna?
Hi everyone, I'm Plant Collections Officer in Ballarat Botanical Gardens.
And Donna is very kindly collating all the discussion points that we talk about today that I'll circulate after the meeting. Peter, do you want to say hello?
Yep. Hello, everyone. I sort of involved in BCARM, actually discussing this with John Sandham and Ben Light from Sydney, who's moving to Royal Botanic Gardens, Edinburgh. So I just want to acknowledge both John and Ben for helping sort of kickstart this idea. And really, it really was about trying to put living collections back into Botanic Gardens agenda and making them front and centre. So that was the sort of desire, and you know, records, plant records being a key part of collections management. So it's really great to see how this is progressing and to have so many people online today. So I'm at the Botanic Gardens, Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria, Melbourne Gardens, for those who don't know, and I'll shut up now.
Thanks, Peter. We've got Tex here today.
Yeah, hi everyone. Tex Moon from the Dandenong Ranges Botanic Garden. I'm a ranger team leader, excuse me, for Parks Victoria. And I guess I come onto BCARM in my role. I've been, I guess, convening the working group that's looking at the database project that we'll give a bit of a update on within this meeting. So good to see everyone. It's a great turnout.
Yeah, it's awesome to see so many people. And lastly, I'm not sure if Wolfgang is here. Jump in if you are. Wolfgang is the manager at Christchurch Botanic Garden, and he's been in New Zealand for 2 years now. So that makes up the BCARM group. So we meet 4 times a year to discuss the projects that we're working on, and the kind of content that we want to provide you guys with. So we've only had, I think, 2 or 3 meetings since the formation of this group. So we're relatively new and we're still figuring out what works best for us, but we will become more and more active as the next year goes on. So as Peter really nicely said, collections are really at the heart of what we do. If we didn't have plant collections, we wouldn't be a botanic garden. We're so different from just a park, where we're a documented living collection that has curated skilled staff looking after it. And that is primarily why this group exists, is bringing that really to the forefront of our BCARM's network, and giving horticulturalists and collection curators really a forum and a voice in BCARM's. What we're really aiming to do with BCARM is fostering those collaborations across the network and advocating for best practices throughout collections and also through plant records. We also want to provide a space for professional development and using the using the expertise we've got through this group. For some of you, you're probably in quite small teams. I know for myself, I'm the only records person at Auckland, so it's nice to have other people to draw on to bounce ideas off and formulate some of your own policies and strategies that help you do your work. We're also hot on current topics and things that are emerging issues for botanic gardens, things like climate change and how that impacts our living collections, how technology plays a role in our day-to-day lives, and kind of scanning what is available and having a look into that and seeing whether that might be useful for some of us to get involved with. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Chris Russell, who's just going to introduce himself and talk a little bit about the BCARM's Council and how BCARM fits into that. So I will stop sharing for a second, Chris.
Thanks very much, Emma, and great to be here and great to see you all. So many, we've got 40 on the line now, which is fantastic. I mean, firstly, congratulations to you, Emma, on picking up the chair role, but also acknowledgements to everyone who's gone before you, and yeah, special shout out to John Sandham. Great to have you on the line as well, John. I mean, I guess what we're seeing this morning, really the professional groups and bringing groups together is such a central part of what BCARM's is as a membership organisation. It's really central to us, you know, not working in isolation, but drawing on the expertise that we all have and contributing to, you know, developing our skills in different areas, experiencing, sharing the experience we have to learn new skills and obviously build capacities across the whole network so that we can be more effective with what we do. And as Emma said, and it's certainly obvious that our living collections are very much at the heart of us being botanic gardens. You may be a bit aware, indeed many of you will have contributed, Council at the moment is going through a process of reviewing our strategic objectives, really with the idea of, given that we were incorporated back in 2004, it's kind of timely for us to step back and review, see that, you know, refresh our understanding of what members are wanting from a network group like BCARM's. I know many of you participated in the online survey and then also the online workshop. And one of the things that came out really strongly was the importance of the professional groups. We have BCARM, BGen, Botanic Gardens Engagement Network, headed up by Julia Watson, also at Auckland, doing a lot of heavy lifting Auckland, which is fantastic, is really flying along now and bringing all those engagement professionals, you know, talking about the collections that we have. Such an important part of Botanic Gardens, obviously, is building capacity within our functional areas, whether that be collections and records management or education or a range of other things, but also building bridges between those, because I think in terms of achieving our Botanic Gardens objectives, we need to continue to strive not to operate in silos. So, that's another part of it. But the online survey very much spoke to the importance of these professional groups, but also of the desire for collections and record management expertise to be shared and growth in that space. So really great to see everyone here. It's something that as we go through, Council continues with the strategic review, which will also result in a change of our structure, which would be coming to members next year for consideration, but that we're not losing sight of the importance of these professional groups. So that's very central to retaining that essence, even under a revised structure. That's all to come next year, and there'll be more communication on that. I don't want to take up airtime this morning on too much on that, but also just an observation that I guess one of the silver linings of the year that we've had with COVID-19 is that it has in many ways forced us to adopt some of this more online engagement. So it is making it much more accessible, that whilst we'll continue to have our conferences and face-to-face as we have building on Adelaide and then Wellington, and then with the Global Botanic Gardens Congress in Melbourne, which has now been moved to September 2022, but that we can complement it with more regularly with these getting together online, which is a really great advance. So in the words of Peter Symes, I might shut up there, and I won't be staying for the whole session, but great program that you've pulled together, and I'm really excited that the group are reinvigorated through the program today.
Cool, thanks, Chris. And I kind of want to echo that. For me, I've gained so much in the last year from connecting with people in the BCARM network. It's really added so much value to what I do, and made me feel like I'm part of a much bigger team than just the 30 staff I work with on site, and that's a huge advantage, and would love to see more of that through hopefully this type of forum. So I am going to carry on with my presentation. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a number of projects that we're already working on as part of the BCARM group, and I'm just having some technical difficulties. Anyway, so yeah, as I mentioned, we have a number of projects that we have already been working on, and we've also got a list of things we're quite keen to pursue. Obviously, that's dependent on the capacity of the group and what's the most important things that we want to do. So some of the things we're quite aware that might be of interest are things like common standard and best practices for living collection policies, plans, strategies, and records management. So developing things that you might not have necessarily the time or the capacity to do on your own, but we might be able to create generic ones that could be applied to each botanic garden. We're also super aware that creating meta collections is something that will be hugely advantageous through the BCARM network. Holding rare and threatened plants in one garden is great, but it's often difficult to hold great genetic diversity or lots of individuals. But we have an opportunity to harness.
I'm good, Liza. How are you?
Oh, someone just needs to mute themselves. We need to harness all these gardens.
Listening to a Zoom call.
Who's that?
There you go.
Thank you. So we can harness all the gardens that are part of BCARM and start to look at seeing different species in different gardens as part of a meta collection, feeding into a high level, which I know Care for the Rare has kind of started to do with a number of threatened plants, which is great, but we can do that more broadly across the network. And hopefully when Tex talks about the regional database project. As we see our records improve across all gardens and specifically regional gardens, we'll get a really good understanding through the network of what plants we are holding and their significance in terms of conservation. We might also be able to help feed into some of the weed risk assessments. These might vary between states and countries, but that's something we're quite interested in. We also want to explore the idea of online forums. I mentioned that at the start. You may have seen BGCI have a forum and a directory of expertise, and we're keen to hear feedback on whether something like that's useful specifically for big GANs, or we could feed into that already existing framework. And we're also keen to see that others become more involved in BCARM, and this might be through some kind of subgroups that might be related more specifically to roles or themes or topics. Whether arborists, for example, want to get together a couple of times a year and discuss some of the things that are specific to them. Maybe there's a proper interest from propagators to talk about tips and tricks for threatened plants that we might be all working on at the same time. So I am going to hand over to Tex now, who will mention briefly about the regional database project that we've been working on. Tex, do you want to jump in?
Yep, thanks, Emma. And yeah, thanks again, everyone, for having me along. Yeah, I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet because I think most of you, I'm hoping, are aware of this project and have heard or seen updates along the way. Essentially, this is a project that's been going on for some time, and it was born out of a recognition and consistent feedback that record keeping is sort of one of those tasks that regional gardens with limited capacity really need help with. So we spent the last, well, I guess the objective is that BGANs will provide members access to an off-the-shelf plant record management system at an affordable annual license fee. And the aim is that the system that we provide will be a user-friendly, centralized database, I guess rolled out from BGANs down. And the advantage of that centralized system is the information sharing and some of those things that Emma already mentioned, like the tracking of meta collections across the network, and really just trying to raise the standard of botanic gardens record keeping in Australia and New Zealand. Mentioned that the idea will definitely be rolling out training as part of whatever this system that we roll out, and this BCARM group will be an ongoing sort of touch point, contact point for help with record keeping. So we spent the last 12 months or more really doing in research and looking at what products and providers are already out there in the market. So for an off-the-shelf botanic gardens records management system, we went to an EOI, and then recently we've just put out a tender invitation to 6 providers within the industry. We received 6 responses, and the evaluation panel shortlisted that down to 3. And we've since had some demonstrations from the shortlisted providers, and I guess got it down to a couple of clear front runners, and we're just in some discussions backwards and forwards with them at the moment, to just seeking some clarity on a few things. So we're hoping to have a recommendation on a preferred candidate to BGAN's council by the end of this year, and then look at actual service level agreements and roll out within the new year. The plan is that it will roll the system to Victorian gardens first as a pilot program, and the reason for that is that we're actually hey Eamon, can you mute?
Sorry,
yeah. The reason for that is that we're seeking some significant funding out of the Victorian state government, so that was the way that we could actually roll it out as a pilot program, and then roll it out to the the greater network shortly after that. So I guess that's a snapshot of where we're at. We're calling it the Regional Gardens Plant Record Management System, which comes as a fairly hefty acronym. And really, I'd just like to, we'll take the time to thank everyone who's been engaged with the project and provided feedback along the way. And an extra special thanks to all of those members who've been involved in the working groups and the evaluation panels, which I might do a bit of naming and shaming, because we've got Donna Thomas from Ballarat, who was introduced earlier, Cherie Parker, who's online from Geelong Botanic Gardens, Prue McGrother from Brisbane, Emma has been involved in the working group and evaluation panel this whole year. Ben Light, who was mentioned before, up until now worked at RBG Sydney, and just recently took a job at RBG Edinburgh, so has been incredibly valuable in this process. Grant Cameron, project manager for Surface Consulting, who some of you may know. John Arnett, who everyone knows from RBG Cranbourne. David Cash from RBG Victoria, I saw online earlier, so thank you. And also a big thank you to Lindy from Kawara and Jill from Shepparton, who came on board for the shortlisted providers, the demonstrations, to really give us that fresh set of eyes and ears and look at it from that regional botanic garden end user perspective. So really teasing out the user experience. And I think that's probably one thing I do need to really push home, is that the major thing we're looking at here is a user-friendly system that will encourage people to get out and do record management. So to have Lindy and Jill's feedback on that has been a lot of help with our evaluation process. So that's pretty much the snapshot of where we're up to. As I said, we'll be providing more updates as things progress further. So keep an eye out on the newsletters and things like that. And feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. And I'm sure Emma will provide emails and stuff like that. But yeah, unless anyone else from the team has had anything that I've missed, that's probably me done.
Oh, thanks, Tex. That was great. Yeah, as Tex said, feel free to email me. My email was in the invite. If you have any queries around that project, I'll either try answer them myself or forward them on to Tex. So I'm going to hand now over to Peter Symes to talk about the Climate Change Alliance. Thanks,
Emma. So the Climate Change Alliance actually was launched in Melbourne in December 2018. And I think one of the key points there is BCARM is actually a founding member of the Alliance. And this Alliance is an Australian initiative. But essentially, it was working to address the existential threats posed by climate change to our collections and landscapes, which is very dear to us. And I know many of you online are facing that in managing your collections. And I won't pick on anybody because I know who they are. But some have greater risk and greater threats to what they're looking after and how do we progress. So the idea of the Alliance was really to try and develop a global movement where we can capitalise on a much broader expertise, and issues such as meta collections really come to the fore because many of these gardens across the world are growing particular species, and a group of exotics that you might be familiar with is the Oak Conservation Network, and growing oaks to replicate their genetic diversity across many countries makes sense if there's an extinction event or damage in one place. So far, the Alliance has really grown. So currently we've got 219 members, 47 associate members across 67 countries. That's in 2 years. And in the last 6 months, we've had 146 members join. So it's actually really progressing forward. And we'd really love to see a very strong Australian contingent in the Alliance. And this is an unashamed plug for anyone listening to join up. We really do want a very strong Australian presence in the alliance, seeing it started in Australia as it was. There's lots of opportunities with this, and one of the ones I think which is probably very relevant to BCARM is one of the things we've been exploring is these horticultural forums, and we've already had discussions with horticulturalists and botanists and so forth in Argentina, had some preliminary discussions with horticulturalists in South Africa. So I think BCARM and the Alliance, there's opportunity here to connect with others in other countries. And so it adds a lot more diversity of sharing expertise and experience. So I think the Alliance can form a bit of a gateway, if you like, for BCARM to connect not just within Australia, but outside Australia, and look at ways of how we address the risk to our collections and better manage these against a changing climate. And that's essentially what it's about. Those who want to find out more information, I'm happy to take email inquiries. There is a website where you can find a lot of information, but I think I'll leave it there. I don't want to take up too much time, but really encourage those listening to become part of it. It is really becoming quite exciting how rapidly it's growing. There's obviously an interest, and it did start in Australia. We are the pioneers of this, so we should be part of it. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Peter. That was great, and I know we're members here in Auckland, so I'd also encourage anyone else in New Zealand to join the Alliance. Now, John Arnott, did you have anything you wanted to jump in and say?
No, that was, I did have something, but Pete's covered it beautifully.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. So we are now going to, we've kind of done enough talking. We, as the BCARM group, would love to hear from you now. So this is kind of the workshop part of today, is hearing from all of you. So I'll kind of go systematically through my screen and ask each of you to unmute yourself and give us one challenge, problem, topic that you face around managing plant collections, and that can be anything. World's your oyster. Think big, think small. We're really looking to see what are the themes around these topics, and where can we provide support. We might be able to connect you to someone after today, to someone who we think might be the best person to talk to, or it might be something that the group needs to spend a bit of time working on and fleshing out some like resources to provide. So think of a challenge you're facing. There's some examples there that I've thought of, and then how would you like to connect with us as BCARM and also your colleagues around Australia and New Zealand. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see all your lovely faces. And I don't know if who I shall put on the spot. Usually, John Arnott, you get put on the spot first. So do you want to kick us off with something?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to jump straight in. The Cranbourne Gardens was designed by Taylor Culvey and Lethlean Landscape Architects, and the initial plant palette was prescribed to us by Paul Thompson, the plant designer. That relationship with TCL and Paul, it's ongoing, but increasingly we're starting to take responsibility for the curatorial decisions. Essentially, we installed a planting and a landscape to the specification of an external client. So what's really interesting at the Cranbourne Gardens at the moment is that we're transitioning from an externally prescribed living collection agenda to an RBGV living collection agenda, and really falling back to some collection management principles for the first time. And that might seem surprising for the Cranbourne Gardens, Royal Botanic Gardens Cranbourne, to actually be looking at writing a living collections plan for the first time, given that we've been going for 20 years. But we're in the process of doing that now. So we're actually exploring living collections documentation and planning, defaulting to a fair bit of work that Peter Symes has done recently at the Melbourne Gardens, but we're writing a collection plan for the first time, which might be surprising to some folks.
That's a really interesting one. Thanks, John. I might ask Jennifer Peters, do you want to say something from Melton?
Yeah, the biggest problem we have at the moment is gardeners. They buy plants in, don't pass invoices on, plant them, don't always tell me they planted them, and I'm chasing them constantly.
Well, I think we probably can help you there with some kind of acquisition process protocols. It's probably something we all face, to be honest. I'm constantly chasing our gardeners around as well.
I mean, at the moment, I've been asked to write a procedures manual.
Oh, yeah.
And top
Awesome.
of the list is the procedures of when you get an invoice, you send it to me or my area straight away. So at least we can get it in the system.
Mm-hmm.
But then I did a report on what was classed as inventoried in the nursery. Over 120 plants. And then I discovered, oh, we planted them months ago.
Right. So a follow-up.
Jenny, you might just explain what your role is and what the Melton Botanic Gardens, because it's
Well,
voluntary.
at the moment, I'm just been entering all the plants into the database for the last 10 years because we've only just started getting a data system. And the gardens itself have got 8 or 9 different groups that have their own different areas, and they take responsibility of ordering plants for their areas, whether it be the Western Australia, South Australian garden, the eucalypt, arboreum, the Mediterranean garden, South African garden, and the list goes on. And we're trying to get it all together into one database. And it's all volunteers that are doing it. So,
Cool. Thanks, Jennifer. That sounds like a massive project, and I think some gardens will be in very similar positions.
I'd say so, yeah.
Greg Lewin, you're next on my list. Do you have anything you want to add?
I have nothing I want to add because we're a blank sheet of paper. So, but I'm very interested. I will email you, Emma, as if you're just starting, what is the data that you should record? So when we get access to the system that was being talked about, we'll obviously have recorded it all on planting, and then we can just load it into the system. So I need to know the inputs over the next 3 months, and then we should be able to start from square one on day one almost. Yeah.
Tex, do you want to jump in and just mention the standard fields of the database?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. So as part of the specifications for the tender, we did actually come up with what we thought was a pretty conclusive list of data fields for an accession. So for each accession within every plant that goes in, every accession, you'd collect maybe not every one of those data fields, but that would be what would represent that. So we can, and it was thought that certainly part of this process, we would actually get that out to members to actually, I guess, start retrofitting spreadsheets, or in your case where you're starting from scratch, actually making sure that we're getting them in the right fields. What we need to do, and we can certainly provide that, it'll just be that once we do actually appoint somebody as part of their onboarding process, we'll be looking at data migration and just making sure that we have that conversation with them around what's the best format for them to actually to migrate it, a format as in how the fields are set up. So yeah, happy to share that at this point, but there might be a little bit of tweaking to do once we actually get somebody on board as well. But
now that would be excellent if you can share with me the standard input for fields, then I can simply create an Excel spreadsheet or the appropriate macros to make sure that as the planting takes place, that all the data's in, because that's pretty well aligned with my skill base. I mean, the botanical side's not, but if I know what information I've got to get from these famous gardeners or whatever, I can make sure it's locked into a computer database without too much issue. So that's my role. So the standard input fields would be most helpful. Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good. Sounds like we should have engaged with you a long time ago.
Cool.
You don't have as much driving force on me as my wife does, so don't worry about it.
Understood.
Thanks, Tex and Greg. Now I can see 3 lovely people at Christchurch Botanic Garden. Do you guys want to jump in with anything?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. My name is Guillaume. I am one of the collection curator at the Botanic Gardens, and it's about 5 of us around the table, giving a go at the first time at doing an online chat, I guess. And for me personally, I would say for regarding plant collection, maybe one of the greatest challenge, it's probably sourcing plant material as unusual or rare plants. Maybe sometimes you back me up, but sometimes we do have plants available within our collection, and we actually feel that if we lose them, they'll probably disappear for good from New Zealand. We're not too sure, the availability of these plant species in New Zealand. And I'm sure I could speak a little for native plants, which, there's difficulty of sourcing native plants as well. Our collection curator that looks after the native section is not with us, but he has to follow a lot of formal stuff, for example, the Department of Conservation. So yeah, to be able to provide good display for the public made of unusual and rare plants, it's just not that easy. I'm not sure if any of you guys would like to add anything.
It's much the same, just difficulty in getting plant material as things become less and less available. It can get very difficult to keep your collections going as things get lost.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
So Emma, when you were talking earlier on, I just thought I really like the idea of having a forum where I'm guessing it would be within New Zealand, but we could actually share plant material, making sure it's all about not harming ecosystem as well, naturally. But it's not about giving or taking, but although I think for sometimes, if we have some rare specimen, we could propagate them. And then if other gardens across New Zealand could be interested, that would be definitely a benefit, I think. And perhaps for the bigger picture, we also have a collection for us in the future. We'll have hopefully we'll redevelop the Australian plant collection, and then I would love to be able to develop a network across Australia to see what we could possibly bring in to provide a good display for the public and for conservation and education as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's great. I just wanted to throw it out there. I know there's a few port staff out there, so perhaps think about what are the gaps in your collections, because there's a number of you on here that might be able to link up and share some of that knowledge and those resources like Guillaume was talking about. I'm going to throw to Kate Rood at Melbourne. Just unmute yourself, Kate, and jump in.
Kia ora koutou, hope you're going well. Good to see you all. There's a few things. One of, obviously I kind of cross over between Australia and New Zealand as I'm the curator for the Aotearoa New Zealand collection in Melbourne. It's been great to be able to do seed collecting and have some fantastic donations from Dunedin and Graham Atkins as well from Dock on the east coast of the North Island, and various other people, and some fantastic help from people like Luke and Guillaume at Christchurch and you guys at Auckland. So I'd really like to get some more of that going, and hopefully we can help out Christchurch with Australian plants and information. I know you guys are redeveloping your children's garden as well. So yeah, it'd be great to get more of that going. please also join up the Climate Change Alliance. And just remember that the Aotearoa New Zealand collection in Melbourne is here for research purposes as well. Obviously, we're in a bit of a firing line in terms of climate change here, because obviously your flora is used to a lot more rain than it gets in Melbourne. So yeah, just when we can travel across the Tasman again, you guys are more than welcome. The other issue that I'm interested in is when we get plants into the garden, and I would really like to get more Maori plant names on our interpretation and signage. And obviously I'm really keen to check for accuracy, and just wondering, you know, where I can go to for that kind of information, and just to double check. You know, I guess there may be regional differences sometimes between plants in different areas. So things like that are really interesting to me. Obviously, for collection purposes, I have issues with you know, protocols that I have to deal with, such as Y262, and as well as the normal quarantine customs regulations and our own RAP process at Melbourne. So several layers to get through, but we do have plants growing in the garden that I was able to bring back on New Year's Eve last year. So thanks again to everyone in New Zealand who's been able to help us out, and hopefully we can do the same for you guys, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks Emma.
That's great. I'll just put a little resource in there in case that's useful for any other people in terms of Maori names for New Zealand plants.
Great, thanks Emma.
So wave your hand if you do specifically want to say anything. Otherwise, I'm just trying to find people I don't know that I haven't met to say something. Judy?
So this is my first go. We're very much at the beginning of doing our database for the garden, even though the garden's been open 20 years. And so I've got a lot in common with both Jennifer and Greg in wanting to know what the fields are going to be, so that we can start getting our information together and checking our records, because a lot of our stuff is volunteer based and our volunteers are 80 plus. And I'm worried about losing records and information before we can start collecting things.
Awesome. Thanks, Judy. We'll circulate the list of the basic inputs for the database through my email with minutes and all that kind of stuff, because it seems like it's a common thing. Dan, Taylor, do you want to jump in?
G'day. Excuse my congestedness. So I get the really bad hay fever at this time of year, which does not work in this industry. Yeah, so I'm Dan Taylor. I am Martin Weaver's assistant. He's our curator at Eastwood Hill Arboretum, National Arboretum of New Zealand. So we've got 110 years worth of history here, and rare and endangered plants, and some really big gaps in some of our horticultural knowledge around those plants, how to care for them, how to propagate them. So yeah, today's been awesome in that respect, where we can start forming those bonds to make that happen. I myself personally, however, have a couple of things that I work on that are quite detailed. I work with our database quite a bit, and the back end of it, I've been learning a lot of stuff from scratch. So in regards to that, like, I could do with some technical help around those that know what I'm talking about, you know, Postgres database, things like that, ArcGIS, getting those to work together, along with on the propagation side of things. Well, we've got many fields that we do track with our plants, and we've move those fields into our propagation database, if you like. Tracking individual accessions is a bit of a technical challenge for us with the way the system's been built. So we've got an existing database that's 20 years old-ish, give or take, and we're basically not ripping it out, but we're reshaping it and putting it in, poking it in different databases to see how it works. So, you know, if anyone's got the know-how and would like to work on that, and I'm quite keen personally to get involved in some of these other more technical things to support with that too. And then what else we've got written down here? Yeah, just agreeing with what a lot of other people are saying too, you know, like with the guys in Christchurch, like we have a lot of rare and unusual stuff for a variety of different reasons, and that rarity in our country, you know, and it's probably the same in Australia and any other countries represented here today, is as those plants are lost, that knowledge is often gone with them, and we may never see them again. So yeah, we're quite keen to get involved in that, and that whole, hey, let's get all our eggs out of one basket and let's get out of our silos. That's really important, and that's going to be really critical for conservation in general and the future of our industry. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. That was great. Some really good points there. Renee, would you like to jump in? Just need to unmute yourself, Renee.
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yep, great. Okay, I'm actually talking on my phone, which is my picture of my cat there. So just hang on a sec until you can see me. There we go, because the computer's not working properly. So I'm Renee. I'm curator of the Herb and Medicinal Collection at RBG Melbourne, RBGV Melbourne, so in Victoria here. And I have in the same room with me a couple of other horticulturalists as well. One of the biggest issues I face in my collection is there are a lot of ephemerals, a lot of short-lived plants. So annuals, biennials, very short-lived. Sometimes some plants will only live for about 8 weeks. And we have quite an extensive record-keeping process, but trying to keep records on those annuals where at some point we would be doing the records as the plant is propagated, planting it out, and by the time you've kind of finished all the record keeping process, the plant is dead. And then you have to do a whole new range of record keeping for that. Along with that as well, our label making process means that you can't order a label at the moment. We're trying to work on this until a plant is verified identification level 3, which you get only after having it verified with a botanist from flowering and fruiting quite often, which for an annual or a short-lived plant is when it's dying. So this is a real issue, and I know Peter Symes has been working with me on how we can do that, and David Cash, about how do we keep a record of these plants but not drive ourselves insane with a record-keeping process as well. And then there's 2 different sides to it. There's the sort of plants you get in that are just things like, you know, basil cultivars, which, you know, how do you keep track of who you're getting them from, and do you need to bother? And then there are others that may be progeny of an original wild collected herb, for instance, and you're only propagating from that plant. How do you keep record of that as well? And I know Jenny Bell, who's in the room with me, she's the curator of the children's garden here, and it's the same sort of thing for all the vegetables as well. So people want to know that what herbs and vegetables are in our collections, but for the short-lived plants, the annuals and biennials, they're not actually on our database at the moment, and a lot of them we haven't got labels for. So that's sort of one of my big pressing issues at the moment, and we're trying to work through it, but I'm sure it would be a universal sort of issue going around as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Renee. I think I might be able to help you on that one. I've had a little bit of a brainstorm recently. So flick me an email. I'm conscious that we've only got a few minutes left and I've got 4 people who would like to speak. So I might just quickly get you guys to say something really short and sweet, and then I'll have a chance to wrap up. So Cherie, did you want to say something from Geelong?
Hi, how you going?
Hey.
I've got a few colleagues here with me as well. But I suppose for us at the moment, sort of, in the beginning of getting our database hopefully up and running again. And we were just sort of wondering with sort of connecting us with more people who have more experience in some of our collections would be great, just in managing them, and when we get sickness and disease, maybe some help in those areas where we're not as experienced as other gardens might be. And also just with referencing our plant names and ensuring that we're getting the correct name when we're putting our labels and entering it into the database, just on some of those tricky ones where you can't quite find a lot on that species. So that would be about it.
Those are great, thank you. Bailey Webb, do you want to say something?
Sorry, I was just figuring out how to unmute myself. I don't have too much to, I haven't had that much to do with this whole process at the moment. My team leader, Tex, though, has had a lot to go on with this. And in our gardens, we have a large collection of rhododendrons, azaleas, and some virias, but we're obviously diversifying into some other botanical plants. But a lot of the staff members, like there's 8 or 9 staff members that could be planting plants out, and I personally don't know exactly where they all are, or my team leader doesn't know where they all are. And then we may go around in a year's time and all of a sudden there's this new plant here. We had no idea it was even there, and it no longer has the tag with it, so we don't know what the plant is anymore. So one of the issues I think we face is actually trying to keep up with the staff planting plants without actually letting everyone else know where they are. And that's just something that I suppose everyone probably has the same issue happening. Yeah, that's probably about it.
Thanks, Bailey. Andrea, Dennis, do you want to say anything?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I know you can't see me. I think one of the things that we've been trying to do over the last few years is to put a handwritten tag beside each plant as we put it in. The plastic ones that come from the nurseries tend to migrate. And it's one way that we're trying to keep our records a little bit more accurate. But if they're written in my disgusting handwriting, no one else can read it. So we've been trying to look at possible ways of somehow typewriting or engraving little tiny tags to see if that will help with record keeping.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
I'm Paul. I'm Paul, also from Maranoa Botanic Gardens. We're 120 years old. Huge lot of issues with old plants, collections, and data from the past, collating and things like that. You're looking at the entire staff except the trainee who's not here at the moment. So we're after, with these collection policies, something that's quite simple and quick. Well, not necessarily simple, but something that's quick so that we can access a system that we can get returns from quickly. We haven't got the facilities to do much. We haven't got the staff, but we've got a complex garden and we've got issues with staffing.
Cool, thanks, Paul. Lucky last is Martin Weaver.
Kia ora, guys. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yep.
So one of the things that, just as a very quick insight, that one thing that we have done here at the Arboretum of New Zealand is we've transitioned from a purpose-built database set into a very widely available app called Fulcrum app. The great thing about Fulcrum is it's very cheap, but it is extremely user-definable. So it's something which I would highly recommend, that has allowed us, even as a transition database, into maybe a short-term thing before we move into a longer-term database. It is very good at taking Excel and putting it into a very visual and a very spatial and individually, as in very individually manipulative field and database. So if you haven't checked it out, do check it out. I've used it a lot, and it has got great interconnectivity with ArcGIS and things like that. So if people aren't aware of it, it is very much worth a look at, because it is and it can deal with everything that we've discussed today, because every single field is user definable. So if there is a group of people that do want to have an introduction to it, then please give myself or Dan a call, because I know Dan's been using it extremely in detail, but we can certainly advise and help, because it has been extremely useful. It's taken a database that was completely non-mobile and very difficult to use, to being in the field, and bearing in mind, with our location, we don't actually have any network coverage either, so it works offline without network as well. So as long as you've got a smart device, a tablet or a phone, it's in your pocket the whole time, which is a huge advantage. So yeah, happy to take that further.
Oh, thanks, Martin.
What's the name of that again?
It's called Fulcrum app. I'll put a link in the message here.
Yeah, pop that in before we disappear. I think that's all we've got time for. It's 3:01. So thank you very much to everyone who's shared comments today, and also comments in the chat. It's a really cool discussion, and there's lots of things that my mind's ticking over that we can definitely start ticking away at. I think the next steps for us will be that we might send out a bit of a survey just to capture everyone's feedback, because not everyone got a chance to say something. So please feel free to get in touch with me directly if there's things you'd like to feed into that survey, or if you just had comments and thoughts you wanted to share with me. I will share the notes from this and a link to the video if you want to watch it again, or you want to share it with anyone, and a few of the other little links that people have posted in the chat and discussed today. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we'll see you in the new year with another BCARM workshop.
And thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Emma. That was great.
Thank you.
You're right.
See you, Kate.
See you soon.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks everyone.
Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna, for taking the notes.
I actually don't have great coverage here where I am at the moment. So, but yeah, there we go.
That's all right. We've recorded it. So
lovely. Yeah, great. Well done.
Yeah.
Well.
If anyone who's on the BCARM group has a moment or 10 to stay on just to have a chat. Otherwise, thank you all for joining.
Hi Emma, it's Kate again. How's everyone in Auckland?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We've got some rain, so we're no longer in a drought, which is great.
Drought.
Yeah, you guys will laugh, but we have had to deal with that this year, which is pretty hilarious.
Okay. Have you recovered from the first lockdown?
Yeah. We did pretty well. We were only in for 4 weeks or something, so
yeah,
it's not too bad compared to you guys.
Yeah, well, we were at least able to come in for both of them. We could still come in and work, which you guys couldn't, obviously. But yeah, we're just picking up now. So yeah, it's nice to be out of lockdown. We've just been able to stop wearing masks and everything, so that's pretty good.
Oh, awesome! Thanks so much for joining the call. It's nice to see you again.